So here we go. Welcome everybody again to Coffee Talks, our second edition with Aly Sterling, Fundraising in a Crisis. There will be a dedicated time, like I said, for questions and answers at the end of the program, and we'll do our best to facilitate those. You are welcome to submit a question using the chat feature, and you can also do that anonymously through clicking how the message comes up, or you can just do it privately to either me, Jody Spataro, to Ashley Jordan, who is also helping facilitate this meeting, and those would be the two options if you wanted to do that privately. So at this time, I'm going to go ahead and turn the microphone over to Aly. I think for most of you, she needs no introduction. She has been a mainstay for us at the Community Foundation through teaching all of you different fundraising blueprints to board governance, and has been a very trusted partner with us in terms of landscaping this philanthropy work that we do together. So Aly, if you'd like to go ahead and start, then we can jump into the webinar.
All right, great. Thanks, Jody. Can you hear me, Jody? Okay, is it everything? Okay, good. All right, terrific, wonderful. Well, I'm excited and happy to be here. I'm always a big fan of everything that the Community Foundation does, and it's good to see familiar faces and also a few new ones as well. So looking forward to sharing a little bit more. I think many of us have been paying attention to so many different recommendations and suggestions and opinions on how to handle things. And so I'm by no means a conclusive expert at this, but definitely have lived through the Great Recession. Actually, that's when I started my firm, which was an interesting time to start anything, right before the bottom kind of fell out then. And I, here to say that things still do turn out great, as we know, and I'm sure many of you also maybe started your development, fundraising, or nonprofit careers at that time too, and saw we recover. So I think there's lots of silver linings to be had also as a result of the experiences and some of the research that came out of the Great Recession. I'll start just by sharing, maybe some of you saw what the Chronicle produced as well, and actually our firm is members of the Giving Institute, so we're staying on top of this and sharing research and data that helps us feel confident and positive around what's to come, because things will turn around. But looking back at the Great Recession, when some of the equity markets dropped to 40%, when we look back at the lull and the charitable changes that happened through that time, charitable giving only dropped 4%. So I think there's something to be shared. I mean, even though right now we feel like the bottom's fallen out of things, when we look back on this, we'll see also that things didn't. And so staying the course in many ways is, I think, one of the bigger takeaways that we're all hearing. And again, through experience, I can tell you it's a big one. When I think back as far as the recession and the work that we did and how we stayed really busy during that period of time, there were really two kinds of nonprofits that we experienced, and I think that again, history shows played out as well. The one kind of nonprofit was the one who looked at this as an opportunity to strengthen, to grow, to try some things maybe that they hadn't tried before that they knew they should have, right? That's kind of one of the personal silver linings I'm experiencing too. There are a lot of things that I know I should have been doing differently, work or personal life, and now we have an opportunity and a chance to do that, so to play out some of those things. So we saw nonprofits who really did use this time to strengthen, to really make sure that their infrastructure was as tight and as efficient and effective as possible, right? And also really did a big job, maybe an assertive job actually, of communicating, of really staying in front of messaging, sharing in a way that maybe they never felt that they needed to share before with their donors and their constituents, really kind of how it's impacting what's going on, some of the residual good things and bad things that were happening as a result of the recession, but they really allowed essentially donors and constituents in a way that was a little more vulnerable than ever before, right? So that paid off. That really showed those donors that they were investors, that they were absolutely important to the mission, to where they were keyed in on some things and into some things that when asked for help, they gave that help. Other kind of nonprofit, unfortunately, kind of went into and I can't blame them necessarily, but a paralysis state, right? Just this kind of walking fetal position of, I don't know what to do and I don't know how to communicate. And so a lot of nonprofits didn't communicate. They didn't ask for money. They felt that they shouldn't. And that's really not for the nonprofit to decide. It's really for the donor to decide, right? And if we're going to have a donor-centric platform from a development perspective, we actually have to ask them what they want to do and how they want to support. And so I would offer that there were those really, two different roads and avenues that we saw from a nonprofit perspective. And I'm sure we'll see that again now. I'm sure each of you are experiencing that with the communication you either are getting or you aren't getting for those nonprofits that you support. And I think now's the time not to apologize. I'll share a little bit more about what I mean by that, but there's a need to speak and communicate differently, right? A sensitivity that is critical and important. We don't want to appear to be tone deaf, right? As we communicate as if this isn't going on, but there's a way to do that. So, we're in this together. It's one canoe. And I love the fact that organizations like yours, Jody, and, doing these kinds of social gatherings and again, the silver lining is they're all getting really comfortable with things like technology that we didn't before. So this is great. The last thing I'll offer too is kind of an overarching thought is that we all in our nonprofits and in our companies have really, I'd say, 4 different kinds of capital. We have social, and we have institutional, and we have financial, and we have political. And so, intellectual, not institutional, though we do have institutional capital too, but I'd wrap that into the financial. Those kinds of capitals right now, those kinds of components to our world are going to be really important to leverage and to be having those firing. And that's not just, your opportunity, it's also the opportunity from a board perspective too. And I'll talk more about that. But this is the time to deploy the kinds of capital that many of us have, and many of us have other kinds of capital as well. But this is the time to do that. So I'll speak more about that in a little bit. But Jody, I know you've got some questions that you wanted to ask that maybe you're hearing a lot from the community, your nonprofits.
I sure do. And just one piece of housekeeping for everyone, depending on how you have your screen set up, we have 67 participants in today's call, so thank you all for taking the time out to join us. In the top right corner, you should see speaker view, and you can actually change your settings so that you don't see the whole Brady Bunch grid, and you can only see the highlight of who is speaking when, if you choose to change your view. So you have that option for, again, those of you who are new to the Zoom technology. Aly, thank you for your introduction. I do have a couple questions I'd like to ask, and then we'll open it up to other questions. We only have about 20 minutes, and like I said on our first Thursday coffee talk, these are meant to be quick 30-minute coffee breaks. I will let you guys know when we hit 10:30, and then if anybody wants to continue on with the conversation, enjoy your cup of coffee, we'll keep going and have a hard stop at 11. So Aly, what I'm hearing a lot from people mostly is this the right time to keep fundraising? It feels a little weird to keep fundraising during a pandemic. Should we still be fundraising, and if so, how?
Yeah, so yes, the answer is yes. I think it depends on what kind of fundraising though, right? We have some clients who are in the middle of major solicitations, 6-figure solicitations, and we can't recommend necessarily continuing with that kind of approach right now. I mean, unless again, the donor best and well, and some people are continuing to solicit in that way and receive gifts, but that's a rarity. You have to be sensitive to the kind of fundraising. Annual fundraising, absolutely. Event and replacement income, as far as that's concerned, absolutely. We had actually a great story. A friend of mine received an email from a institution that was following up on an ask that they had made to him about like 6 weeks ago. So before things sort of, changed dramatically. And the follow-up was, wanted to just give you a quick email, see if you'd been able to think about that, know that things have changed for you, for everyone, but didn't want to just make you think we forgot about you in that conversation. And so can we schedule a call? Maybe we can update you a little bit about what's changed for us. and hear about what's changed for you. But she definitely put in there, though this was a follow-up from that, kind of cultivation, slight solicitation meeting 6 weeks prior. And I asked him, I said, so how did you feel about that, reach out like that? How'd that strike you? And he said, she's doing her job. That mission continues to exist and have needs, and probably different needs right now. And I applaud her for doing her job. She addressed it in a sensitive way. She gave me an out, to where if this wasn't a good time, I could have said no, sort of thing. But he ended up, having a phone call with her and continuing that conversation. So she didn't actually close the gift during that call. I did want to know, but she continued to keep it alive. And the project that they were talking about was every bit as relevant as it was 6 weeks ago. So it was a valid conversation to continue. I think, we are seeing a lot of organizations who are updating their cases for support. And they're really getting very focused and granular around how this pandemic, both the health components of it, and also the market volatility and the impact on their budgets, et cetera, how they're being impacted. And so they're kind of putting an additional layer on that case for support, and they're using that messaging to kind of just frame everything, frame conversations, frame new appeals, new online, digital sorts of fundraising, et cetera. So I would offer that just taking a second, and many of you have probably done this already, but just to kind of frame how the pandemic has affected your organization, like a paragraph or two or some talking points, making sure that you've got those and you're sharing those with your board and with your staff, and certainly then using them with your so yes to continuing to fundraise, just I think with the pivot to ensure that we're being sensitive and staying the course, because I'm sure each of you still have the exact same needs. I think there is a line of difference though between needs and wants right now. So capital campaigns, we've had a couple of those clients. You're like, not sure right now is the best time for us to continue with this want, if you will. I mean, it's needed, don't misunderstand, but there just are differences now between needs and wants with organizations. So yeah, I hope that's helpful.
That's a really great segue to my next question. You kind of touched on it right at the very beginning on whether or not we should be focusing our efforts to replace lost income from our events. With the social distancing, the stay in place, so many of our nonprofit partners have had to cancel events, and for right now and to the foreseeable future, it doesn't seem like event revenue will be the way to do fundraising. So how should we be communicating to our constituents, and what should we be saying, and how do we say it, and using what mediums to really think about, oh my goodness, how do we fundraise now without a special event?
Yeah, so I think this goes back to this two different kinds of nonprofits. We've seen some really wonderful, innovative replacement events, if you will, right? Virtual events or asks just to have folks actually continue either that ticket price or some innovative way to put a spin on that and kind of plug that hole that otherwise was created in a lot of budgets as a result of not having those events or having to put those events off. And then we're seeing a lot of organizations who just aren't doing anything. They canceled the event, and in my conversations with them, they're like, we just don't feel like right now is the right time to ask for money. And I think that, again, price point matters right now. People are actually continuing to give. They're giving smaller amounts. They're keeping those annual gifts that they had in play, and they're definitely keeping those event gifts when they can. Many of them are not asking for refunds. I mean, they're just saying, just keep it, just let me, and I usually would have spent another $200 at your event from an auction perspective, what have you, and so let me just write a check. And some organizations are actually asking for that. They're being a little assertive and getting out of their comfort zone, and they're saying, just reflect and think about what maybe you would have spent at that event, and if you have the ability to, gosh, we would love to have that because we depend on it, and really setting up sort of the amount that is usually raised, and then unfortunately what was lost. So I do know that there are a lot of organizations, a lot of boards that are having conversations right now about event dependency. really taking a look to see moving forward how dependent the organization is on events, because it's just a good time to do it. Not that we expect something like this to happen again, and we hope it certainly doesn't, but there's, again, no reason why we shouldn't take a second and reflect to see what that revenue diversity looks like from an organizational perspective, and just maybe eliminate a little bit of that dependency. Also, I had a conversation a few days ago with an organization that was going to look at the people who were going to that event, and look at those companies and those sponsors that were so gracious to sponsor, and also not to ask for any funds back, but go ahead and keep those. And they were going to go back to the companies that had done that each year to look at who they were sending, because often at events, a company will just give a table up, right, to their employees, friends, etc. And sometimes we struggle to capture the information that about who those people were, and they really had a great time. They really enjoyed the mission, but that conversion, looking at who was going to those events, is going to your events, and you're going to have events, we want to make sure we're actually converting those individuals who are going, often for free, and making sure that we're having communication, we're connecting with them. So the event isn't just a PR kind of thing. If it's going to have a dollar figure in your budget, it should definitely have some sort of strategy around converting individuals who are attending and falling in love with your mission, and having them have annual donors and reoccurring donors at that point too. So lots of good conversations about really digging into the data about those past events, see who was there, making connections into your annual fund, and then kind of having a real strategic conversation when we're calling people.
So I'm going to stray away from some of the questions I have, because we do have some questions coming in on the chat, and to kind of piggyback with what you were just saying, Aly, around really kind of pulling those donors, cultivating those donors that were attending our special events into an annual giver, or converting that donor to a more substantial mission-driven donor to your organization. You and I had a conversation yesterday about the people that might be a table sponsor at my event, and invite 6 of their friends to sit with them. I don't have the information on those 6 friends, and what can my board, what should I be doing as a leader of my organization to convert those donors, reach out to those donors, to replace that lost income, because I don't necessarily have the contact information. I didn't do a great job of capturing who was attending. So now what?
Yeah, I think now it's a great opportunity. There's someone at that company, right, that your organization has been close with, and been that point person. So now's the right time to reach out to that point person and provide them a digital platform for them to maybe send to those individuals who came in the past years, or who were going to come this year, right, who were planning on coming this year. Asking them via phone, not via email, via phone, saying, here's what's happening with us. We have a gap that was created because of the pandemic, and we really were looking to raise $75,000 this year on the event. You've been a company, a corporate sponsor for the past 4 years. Is there any way, if I send you a link and script you some copy around how to do this and what to say, would you forward this over to those individuals in your company that you've taken before, or friends that you've taken before, etc., and just forward it to them? And I would create a copy that would say, dear whomever, as you know, XYZ organization is near and dear to my heart. They can't have their event this year. We've sponsored it as a company, and we are all in with that company sponsorship. You've come in the past, you've come to an event in the past, we were going to invite you this year. Would you consider, in lieu of the actual event, making a contribution? So there you have it, right? So now if they make a contribution, they're your donor. There is a sensitivity. If you don't have their information in the past, it's not like you can really ask that person to give it up, because I'd probably be uncomfortable doing that myself too. But I would serve at least as a conduit to my friends and my employees who I've invited in the past, or we're going to invite this year. That's just one idea.
That's great. I want to take a minute to talk about some of that. I mean, you talked about potentially spoon feeding in a nice way. our volunteers, even our board, a great way to utilize our board during fundraising or during a crisis is to give them kind of an elevator speech, so to speak, on how to communicate to our donors. Let them become an extension of your sales force, of that fundraising arm. I want to take a moment to do a screen share here. And if you would, Aly, just talk about the toolkit that your firm has created. And while you're talking about it, I'm going to share my screen and let everybody on the call see where they can download this toolkit.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Jody. We'll let Jody pull that up. So we created, we're big about on like scripting, as Jody said, and making things easy, right, for people. Because one of the things we know is that board members aren't opposed to playing the role of fundraiser. They just don't have the words sometimes. They really don't know what to say. Even your board members and volunteers who have been around for a while, who you would assume do and know the elevator speech, you know, they're full-time working somewhere else and probably on a couple other boards. And so we struggle as volunteers to just know what to say or to say the right things. And so we're big fans of scripting, of just, you know, giving somebody the copy that they need. They can customize it all they want, but just give them the basic boilerplate. And so in that vein, we created this document for our nonprofits, which is very similar. So this is just an overview for me, which you heard from already. But as Jody's scrolling here, and keep scrolling, Jody, that's great. You can scroll to the first, well, this here, so this slide just talks about some of our key components that we believe are going to keep, again, you as one of those nonprofits in that first category that I spoke of from a recession perspective. So, and everything as simple as just being positive, right? Because enthusiasm is contagious, as we know, and that's the kind of thing we want to, you know, be struck with right now, is that kind of contagious. So here we see a worksheet, which actually just allows you, and if you, on our website, you can download the worksheets, and they're pretty plug and play. You can just templatize them. You can fill in essentially what the different initiatives are that you have in the pipeline right now, and then how you're going to make changes and adjust them. So I think from a board perspective, it's nice to know that, you know, the organization that your board members are serving on have already addressed like each different initiative, each different fundraising plan that you have in place. And some need a lot of correction, right, because of this, and others might not need that much. So there's both a financial component to the worksheet, and then there's a separate one that's just about communications, just truly the crisis communications and your plan for that with your donors. So thanks, Jody. But yeah, that can be found, and those are intentionally very easy for you to manipulate.
Great. So I actually just shared the link to that in the chat so that you are all able to download those resources and pull them. Aly, thank you for making those forms easily available for people to use immediately. A couple other questions. One we have from a performing arts organization, Dave DeFore, he's asking, you know, when his entire you know, mission is about delivering periodic events, and those events have been taken away. Do you have any sort of insight that you might be able to offer to him on, you know, what are we doing when your mission is programs, and how do you replace that lost income?
Yeah. Well, replacing the lost income is maybe a secondary question or conversation, but as far as what do you do, right, when you can't perform right now? And I think we're all seeing some really fabulous creative digital opportunities, right? So that experience that you were delivering before, many of us have figured out how to deliver them, that same experience, maybe in a smaller way, and via, you know, the internet and via some of the newsletters. And actually, we, an arts organization that we work with just did a drop-off blitz. They took a bunch of artwork that kids had created and wrapped them up, and actually went to some of like 25 of their top donors' homes, and, you know, just pulled in the driveway, dropped it off in the front door, and you know, their donor had this really neat piece of artwork that was created. I'm sure you can insert whatever you want there, right? It could be even some, you know, some swag from your you know, t-shirts, or even like a toolkit of sorts, right? I mean, depending on what you do, I'm thinking of a performing arts organization, and some that, you know, have dance and different things like that involved. I mean, stretching exercises. I know that's silly, but I mean, I'm sure that your dancers and I'm sure your performers have lots of things that they could give advice on, as far as when you're working from home and you're not moving quite as much. I bet there's a way to have it come from them, which again keeps them at the highlight and focus, but also they're delivering something that's meaningful and really relevant as of today. So, you know, how do you make money on that? You don't right now, but will you? Coming out of this, you bet. If someone gave me some stretching exercises from a nonprofit that I have supported, that was the performing arts or ballet, I might not use them, and I might use them, but I would remember that they tried, you know, to keep me active and keep me moving. So I just think it's a matter of just, this is the best part really of situations like this. We get to be creative, and I hope that all of you who are doing really innovative things right now, I hope you don't stop doing them. I hope when things get back to where they should be, that people just continue with this innovation and this technology advancement that we've had.
So, you know, during this pandemic, it's hard to turn the focus on my needs, because it seems almost, you know, trivial to say, man, I'm gonna turn the focus just on me and just talk about what I need right now. But if we, as a nonprofit, don't successfully articulate what our needs are we potentially losing the opportunity to have those needs specifically addressed with our donors? Should we shy away from talking about our needs? You know, what do you recommend? Should we be laser focused with our donors and say, this is exactly what I need from you right now? Or do we create a message that's a little bit more lofty that just says, thanks for supporting our mission. We could really use your support right now. Where do you find the balance there?
Yeah, I think both. I mean, I think you can do both, right? You can have, and without having it be too wordy. I think you can do one through visuals too. There have been some great examples. I mean, we want unrestricted funds right now, right? And those are sometimes difficult and hard to get. So now's the time to take an example of something that you've purchased or you've done because of unrestricted funds. And in your next newsletter, have a visual of that. So a school that we work with showed laptops that actually they used unrestricted funds to be able to purchase like 3 years ago. And because of that, of course, now all those students have access to laptops in their homes for the virtual schooling that's happening. But that just underscored for that organization and to their donors that that unrestricted funding, while we, you know, some of our donors go, oh, you know, we don't want to give to unrestricted funding. Well, actually, it's there for a reason, for times like this. And sharing an example of that, I think, is a really good, you know, way to communicate that without using words, and then saving your words maybe for, and right now, you know, this is our current, you know, best and highest use of your attention and your financial resources would be this, you know, this need that we have. So I think you can do both. And I think we have to do both because we have to show the gratitude for past gifts. We have to show also how we use those past gifts in a way that isn't, again, the name of the game is relevant to today's issue and crisis. We have some organizations that are taking the time to do what we call compassion calls, right? So just checking in on donors, but at the same time, they're actually just looking at their record, that donor's record, and reminding them of how awesome they have been in the past, that kind of unrestricted giving has gone to support this and that. Their cumulative giving, you know, has been amazing. And, you know, just again, not making asks, but just making really, you know, how are you? And hearing from them and how they are, but then secondly, stewarding, you know, just practicing some great stewardship, which will definitely set up everyone really well in the next few weeks as we start to get through things.
So I have two more questions. We are out of time at our 10:30 mark. So anybody that needs to drop off, you're not going to hurt our feelings. I would like to get to two questions that have popped up, and then we can wrap things up. Along the lines of stewardship, Aly, right now is a real difficult time for our nonprofits who are working remotely to handle acknowledgments or gift receipts. You know, do you mail them? Do you not? You know, I know one thing that the Community Foundation has moved to is an email acknowledging the gift, but then emailing them a PDF of what would be a printed text tax letter. What do you think about that? I mean, we actually acknowledge to our donors, we recognize this is a little bit out of the norm, but as we are social distancing, here's this. If you want this to be printed, we'll send it to you. There'll just be a delay. Let's talk about that stewardship and handling those acknowledgments. And then I have one other question for you.
Yeah, I love those. I love what you're doing, Jody. That sounds like a great plan. I mean, from an email, immediate email, even having the PDF attachment is terrific. And you're kind of, you could be done at that point if you wanted to. I love it most importantly because, again, it forces an engagement. It forces a conversation that could go both ways, right? I'm sure you're hearing from some of your donors that you wouldn't if you had just put that in the mail to them. And I would go one step further potentially, and that's a great opportunity as a trigger within your organization for the phone call. So do the email if you want first, or do the phone call first to say, hey, we got your donation, can't thank you enough. Right now, because of what's going on, we're not sending things in the mail, and we're going to do it via email. And again, just it's a reason to pick up the phone. I cannot tell you how important the phone is right now. Just like this is so important to see everyone. It makes a great deal, especially to some of your donors who are a little bit more isolated than others. It really can go a long way, but I think everyone knows that. It's just a matter of when we're really busy in the course of the day actually doing it. You know, it's the one thing that kind of falls off of my to-do list, right? Because no one's asking. I don't have an appointment with that person. But that's also a technique too, is to kind of schedule your own period of 2 hours or something during the course of a day and ask someone else to hold you accountable, you know, for making those phone calls. Yeah, I love what you're doing, Jody. I think that's a great solution.
Great, thank you. Okay, one more question and then we'll wrap up. You know, we have a lot of our organizations who may not necessarily just be replacing special event income, but really just needing to do fundraising to keep their lights on, just to be able to survive. How would you suggest our nonprofits approach those types of requests when they are simply fundraising to survive, not necessarily fulfilling mission, although I might question surviving being mission delivery. So, but reading the question.
Yeah, so I think I'll go back to those 4 different kinds of capital. And I think this is where, you know, you really have to be looking at who's around you and how you can leverage the relationships that are in play. So I'm just going to rattle off a few different things that come to mind when I think through, you know, the social component, the intellectual, the political, and the financial. And I'm going to focus on the financial. Board members right now can be obviously instrumental, especially when things are getting bad. They should be assisting with scenario planning, right? With the plan B, plan C, plan D of what might happen, what could happen with the organization. Even if it doesn't happen, those scenarios should be in play. They should be assisting in the renegotiation of debt, right? And having conversations with individuals that they know maybe better than you know, that you may have leases with or line of credit, you know, terms with from an SBA perspective, all of that. So this is where really leveraging, I mean, when it gets tough and you know, for some of us it will, and for some it won't, hopefully, but that's the time to put into play that network that those board members have. Foundations, there's a lot of board members who have known about different, you know, foundations that they haven't actually, you know, sort of approached. And now's the right time to approach those foundations, not only because it's needed, but also because for those foundations who are using a 3 to 5 year rolling average from a spending policy perspective, they're still giving out right now. They may not be in a couple of years at the same amount, but now's the time to really be looking and dusting off your foundation list and your grant list. And also from a donor advice fund perspective, again, you know, a lot of our board members know other people who have donor advised funds. Now's the time to, you know, shake loose a little bit of those funds that are sitting somewhere maybe. But it's just, you know, politically speaking, from an advocacy perspective, there are so many different ways to fire this up. Looking at your board though, as really that group that should be, they should be deployed now. They should be firing on 4 cylinders as well. So I would answer that question in that way. It is unfortunate that the plea for help around a mission that is going under, unfortunately, is not a good one. This is where that doesn't work really well, because individuals mostly don't want to support something that is, I mean, already at that end stage of decline. And so I would offer for those organizations, now that's the time to deploy your board members and or your own team, looking at formal partnerships and collaborations. So we're going to see a lot of formal partnerships and collaborations that are really healthy ones and should have happened a long time ago come out of this and from this. So fundraising at a time of panic and distress, unfortunately, does not work well at all.
Well, thank you. I think that's a great way to kind of put a nice, pretty bow on our coffee talk this morning. There is one more question out there, and I would just say to all of you, when the pandemic is over, much like the bride who has accepted an engagement, there are only going to be a handful of dates available to have your wedding day or that special event. And what I would really encourage all of you to consider are alternative ways to do your fundraising outside of a special event. We've all become very dependent on special events, but I would encourage each of you to consider different ways to reach out to your constituents and your donor base outside of a special event. I know that just in my background, special events can be very expensive to facilitate. There could be money saved by not doing a special event. And as Aly mentioned, really reach out to your boards and ask them to pick up the phone and use your fingers and do some old-fashioned calling to our donors. Reach out to them. I don't know about all of you, but me being that extrovert, I so miss my social interaction. So it's wonderful to see all of your smiling faces in your own personal environments today on the Zoom meeting. But pick up the phone and call your donors. And if you are at your capacity on your time, engage your board and ask them to make those calls, and use the tools that Aly has provided to us on her site. We will add those to our website as well, in case you don't remember, along with the recording on today's webinar. Aly, I just want to say a humongous thank you for making time to share your expertise with us today. I always enjoy our conversations. I always take something away from learning with you, and it just truly is a real joy to work alongside of you in this environment. So thank you so much for joining us today. Yeah.
Right back at you, and to everyone else too. So be well. I'm around if anyone needs anything.
Yeah, what I will also say is if there are questions that you have for Aly that we didn't get to, let us know. We'd be happy to connect you with Aly. You're welcome to reach out to her specifically, and we can work through what that looks like as you guys all navigate this new space. Thank you all for tuning in to our second edition, our second audience of Coffee Talks. We hope that you'll join us on Thursday for a little bit more of a casual way to connect with your team during a pandemic with Dr. Dino Signori. His event will be at 2 o'clock. Really do appreciate you guys taking time with us today. Hope you are all being safe, social distancing, and staying well. Take care, everyone.
Peace.